So today is the anniversary of Pedestrian Space, May 17th. 4 years ago, I launched this account with the intent to use this space to begin to document best practices and barriers of walkability that I'm seeing in my environment, to begin to connect with people around the world, working with, advocating for issues of walkability. And wow, what an interesting 4 years it has been. I often look to the establishment of this very account as the roots of so much of my work, my current PhD work, the media advocacy, the development of the Global Walkability Correspondence Network, and more. You might have noticed that I've started dropping more images of vegetables. If you know me, you know I love quality, really quality fresh vegetables. And I am indeed at Pedestrian Space sort of expanding the wheelhouse of issues that relate to urban resilience. You might say, hey, I didn't sign up for this. I'm following this for walkability stuff, and that's okay. We'll still be covering a lot to do with walkability. Walkability and its many dimensions are the beating heart of Pedestrian Space. But also, deeper than that, the deeper mission is really about issues of resilience and how can we be healthy and thriving in our towns and cities, and what does it mean to be a sustainable city? Of course, in many different dimensions globally, there's endless context to explore when it comes to sustainable urbanism. We're bringing in issues of food. First of all, I'm very passionate about food. It didn't come out of nowhere. And I feel I was really ready to now approach this issue in a media sense, in an academic sense, and really start to explore issues of food and cities. Okay, so what are we talking about at Pedestrian Space when we're talking about food and cities? Well, the list could be endless, but some of the things we're looking to cover and getting into are issues of food sovereignty, local food systems, how we can support them, how municipal authorities can support them, how people can participate in local food systems. It's about championing urban gardening to be more accessible. Urban gardening shouldn't be an activity for the privileged or for experts. Of course, we always need experts to lead the way, but we're championing urban gardening as something that should be accessible, democratic activity, available to all, and with also a lot of resources, including, local experts, local community leaders to help demonstrate how to establish gardens, how to do things, but really not having it as an activity for the privileged. This has popped up in a lot of our discussions with people in diverse cities around the world who note that there is a divide in their communities, with urban gardening being less available as an activity for marginalized communities due to lack of time to do it as a hobby, lack of resources. So we really are ready to get into that. Issues of food access and public health. I come from the USA, where food deserts are a real and serious problem. It is not okay that people don't have any walkable access or any local access at all to fresh vegetables and fruit. While across town, maybe in a so-called better off community, there's loads of options. So getting into issues of food access, public health, privilege, equity, inequity. We're also connecting with people all over that are doing school gardens. My synapses just light up, I think, thinking about all these people involved with school gardens and bringing gardening to school-age children across the world in diverse contexts, community gardens. This all connects to a broader mission at Pedestrian Space, which is about urban resilience. And looking at food issues and urban resilience, we of course are also going to get into issues of food in the scope of crisis. So war, natural disasters, supply chain disruption, etc. How do we look at food access in cities where many of us are dependent on the local grocery store for sometimes all of our food needs? How do we look at local urban gardening, local urban agriculture, community agriculture as something that can be supported moving forward in the scope of diverse crises. A rather simple, but I think profound quote from one of my favorite books, Creating Sustainable Cities by Herbert Girardet. He is a fellow of the Schumacher Institute, which I am also a fellow of. Food growing should be regarded as an important component of future urban living. That is in the chapter Prospects for Urban Farming. Again, Creating Sustainable Cities by Herbert Girardet, one of my favorite books of all time. I'd like to share a little story. During the pandemic, my family and I were living in Sweden, which infamously did not have a lockdown. There was a lot of restrictions felt on the ground, so it wasn't like nothing happened there. But there was no lockdown, and I also believe we didn't see the same level of pandemic effects on grocery stores. For example, I saw in some societies there was a lot of panic buying, also sometimes restrictions to access to stores, certain hours that you can go and so forth. We weren't seeing that in Sweden, but I was noticing it on the news. And so we lived in the middle of the city at the time where we were living, a small city in central Sweden. And I remember going to the grocery store. It was a very surreal time. And I remember thinking, here's this little grocery store in the center of the city that we use for 100% of our food needs. Like many families, whether you live in cities or suburbs, often rely 100% on their local grocery store for their food needs. So this was our store that we relied on, and that, rough estimate, 5 blocks out each way, households throughout that city relied on that store for their food needs. So I thought, in a time of crisis, pandemic restrictions, war, natural disaster, supply chain disruption, how long would it take to empty these shelves? You might say, oh, that's crazy, that's ridiculous. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that such a thing can happen. It has happened in other places, and it can happen again. So really thinking about our dependence and how vulnerable we are. Not only that, I'm crazy about quality vegetables, as I said, and going through the produce area, and I always use the example of garlic, finding garlic, majority of garlic being sold from halfway across the world, when the nation you live in, the soil and growing conditions are perfect for amazing garlic. So really thinking about these issues of food, this has been percolating for me for years, and I'm really very happy to be bringing this into the wheelhouse here. So stay tuned for more. Here's some pictures from our current little test urban garden where we are growing diverse herbs. I love herbs. Lettuce, trying out some corn. Let's see what else. Chili peppers, tomatoes are coming, carrots. Yes, I need a lot more space because I have a lot more growing to do.